I took a shot at recreating the Peacock logo on my phone when it's buffering. Let's see how it turned out. So I created it in After Effects. The initial setup was pretty straightforward. This is a copy of the logo that I brought in first, so let's go back just a little bit. Something that I was exploring first when I was playing it through like this, you can see I kind of let it play a little bit, go back and forth. And that was mostly so that I could identify whether or not that first circle, that yellow circle, kind of led the rest of the animation. And at first glance, it looked like the yellow circle would move up and down, and then all the other circles would just kind of repeat that. And that's what I was curious to know. I think that turned out to be the case, but sometimes at first glance, that's not always the case. So I was watching it frame by frame to see if that was happening. So I created, so after I determined that happened, I went ahead and created just an initial circle, that first yellow circle, and then made a whole bunch of copies. That was for each of the other circles. I felt like just setting it up would be a little easier first. Normally I'll draw my shapes and objects in Illustrator before I pull them into After Effects, but in this case, where they're all so simple, it's just a bunch of circles, it just didn't make sense to go into Illustrator and add that extra step. Now here, what I've done too is I took that video that I had of the logo itself and I put it as the very top layer. Then I reduced the opacity so I could see through it, and then locked that layer. What that did is it just created that template, so that essentially what I'm doing is tracing. I don't have to deal with, trying to look at the logo in one place and then recreate it in another. I can literally just draw on top of it. So I put all the circles in their proper place, and then I did some alignment to it just to make sure it was all lined up exactly how I wanted it. And then I hid everything else and started with the yellow circle. So what I'm doing now is I'm adding the keyframes of the animation itself. And if you're not familiar with animation, keyframes represent the different stopping points of the animation. So with this particular logo, that circle goes up and then it stops, and then it comes back down and it stops, then it goes back up and stops. And so at each one of those stopping points, I added a keyframe and then moved my circle to that specific location. And that's one of the great things about After Effects, is it will tween, or it will actually create all of the separate images in between that I need in order to get from point A to point B, or from keyframe to keyframe. So I just set up my keyframes to get started, and when I first set them up, they're all linear. In other words, moving from the first keyframe to the second, it moves at the same speed, which that's what you'll see here. If I move back and kind of watch this animation, well, you can see that's just my regular animation. It's very blocky, and you'll notice that it doesn't follow the animation on the video. My keyframes still line up, so when I'm on this keyframe right here, when my timeline is right there, you'll notice my circle is exactly where the original circle was, but if I move back, my circle is not in the right place. And so that's what I'm about to fix now. That's basically due to my speeds not following. The original logo, it would follow a pattern of, it would start out kind of slow, and then it would speed up, and then as it came to the next stopping point, it would slow down. Very much like a natural start and stop would happen. If you imagine a car doesn't start out going at 60 miles an hour, it has to accelerate. And that's the same thing with these objects when we animate them. If you want it to look natural, you have to have it start out a little slow, speed up, and then slow down as it comes to a stop. So that's what I was doing here, and I tried a few different methods. First I was using that graph, and then now I'm trying to manipulate the numbers kind of mathematically. I found that I wasn't good at either. So I went back to the graph because I seemed to be having more success with the graph. And after playing with it for a little bit, eventually I got to the point where I felt comfortable and I was able to actually create what I was looking for. So you can see here, and now my circle, it's not perfect yet, but it's very much more so than before, following that same pattern of the original video, or of the original animation. And I kept kind of just tweaking and adjusting, playing with it. I'm not real good at this, so it's very much trial and error for me. I have to play with it a little bit. But after I got the first circle looking almost how I wanted it, it wasn't quite there, so I had to jump back and kind of, again, just do that back and forth and play with it a lot. It probably took me about 10 or 15 minutes to just get this easy right. And that was the trickiest part of this animation, because you'll see all of these circles, they follow this same pattern. The speed and the rate of acceleration, they all were essentially being mirrored after that initial circle. So I knew once I got that first circle right, then the rest would be easy. So I got that first yellow circle right, felt good about it, went ahead and added in my overlay video so I could see what the original was doing, and then I copied all of those keyframes over to my orange circle, the next circle. And there's multiple ways to do this. There's lots of ways that you can copy animation and have images moving in the same way over and over again. It makes the animation work much faster. The way I'm doing it, I wouldn't say it's the hard way, it's kind of like the lazy way, because ultimately, I mean, it was pretty easy to do up front to do it this way, but one of the limitations of just copying keyframes over and over and over again is if we decide, like, let's say I take this to you know, whoever's going to review this, and they say, you know what, those little circles are moving too fast. Well, to go in and change it, I'd have to literally go in and change every keyframe. And again, I could just start over. I could delete the orange, red, purple, blue circle and start from there. But my point is that maintaining it is it's a bit of a pain. Whereas there are other ways, for example, using expressions, that you can set up that same follow movement so that the circles would follow each other in a very same, it would look exactly the same. But because it's set up a little bit differently, it'd be much easier to maintain and much easier to change. So anyway, I don't know that I recommend that method, but this was a quick, easy way to get it done. Now, after I had all my circles doing what I wanted them to do, I tested it out, looked good, added in a background that was black so we could see it nice and clear, and then pulled it out into a video. And yeah, we ended up liking the end there. So here's my version in real time and the original version. So pretty close. I thought it turned out pretty good. And that is the Peacock buffering animation. Thanks so much. Bye.